Good morning, everyone. My name's Amanda Brown. I'm the Clerk and Monitoring Officer of Avon Fire Authority. Welcome to the meeting of the Audit, Governance and Ethics Committee. We're here at Severn Park this morning. I'm opening this meeting as the first item on the agenda is the election of the Chair for the municipal year. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Tucker.
Could I propose Councillor Paul Goggin, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Neil Butters. Thank you. Does anybody disagree or abstain to that? Does everybody agree? Can I have a show of hands? Super. Thank you very much. That's carried. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you everyone for re-electing me. I'll move swiftly on as we've started a little bit late. We don't have any apologies for absence today. And item number 3 is the emergency evacuation procedures, which Angela will present.
I think for expediency, and as there is quite a COVID-19 one-way system, but the quickest one to say that is if there isn't a fire alarm this morning, if the alarm does go off, you'll see me stand up and then please follow me to proceed to our evacuation procedures.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest for today's meeting? No? That's good. Okay, we'll move on to Chair's business. First of all, I'd like everyone to, I'll go around and ask the members to introduce themselves. This will be for the benefit of the members of the public who can watch the recording when it is uploaded after the meeting. I'm Councillor Paul Goggin, representing Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward in Bristol. If I could start.
Councillor David Wilcox, representing Lockleys Ward in Bristol.
Councillor John Ash, representing Lively Stoke and South Gloucestershire.
Councillor Richard Tucker, Western Supermare Milton, North Somerset.
Councillor Ernie Brown, representing Stoke Gifford and South Gloucester.
Robert Payne, Western Supermare Central, North Somerset Council.
Neil Butters, Bath and North East Somerset Council, Bath Avon South Ward.
Thank you. And I'd like to welcome our new members today. Thank you very much for joining the committee. And I'd also like to ask officers to introduce themselves.
I'm Angie Feeney, I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire Rescue Service.
I'm Emma Bowen, Democratic Services Assistant at Avon Fire.
Hi, I'm Danielle Neal, I'm the Treasurer to the Fire Authority.
Hi, I'm Jane Williams-Locke. I'm the Deputy Director of Corporate Services.
Claire Bentley, I'm Head of Finance at Avon Fire.
Russell Rabbage, our Senior Accountant at Bristol City Council.
Oh, sorry, Sam Wilcock, I'm going to take your minutes today.
And as I said earlier, Amanda Brown, I'm the Clerk and Monitoring Officer for Avon Fire Authority.
Brilliant, thank you all.
Chair, you're missing one. Doesn't the Deloitte Claire?
I didn't know there's enough time. Ian, sorry.
Good morning, members. I'm Ian Houghton, partner with Deloitte, and I provide the external audit service.
I'd like to update the committee about the latest HMIC FRS inspection. It has now concluded, and we anticipate their report will be issued later this year in winter. Just talking about the voting system today. At the moment, we're still following the procedure that we did on the remote meetings, in that I will ask members for any votes against, any abstentions after that, and then I will assume all other members are in favour and are voting for. But we can do it as a show of hands here today anyway. Moving on to item 6, the minutes of the meeting on the 21st of May. Would any of the members that were present at that meeting like to raise anything regarding that? Can I propose then that we accept that that is a fair and accurate representation of what went on? Could I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Nick. I will sign those and pass them to Emma for the end of the meeting. Do that in a second. We will move on to item number 7, which is a public access statement. I will read it out. As at the moment, due to COVID regulations, we are having members of the public actually present at the meeting. Okay, now the public access statement is received from Ms. Jenny Gwynn, dated 10th of July 21, and it reads as follows. Public access statement from Jenny Gwynn. The period of public inspection of accounting records for the year to 31st of March 2021 is now to begin. Last year I received limited records requested during the public inspection period. From these I have found an error of £428,256 in the 2020 accounts regarding entries in the asset register for Avonmouth Fire Station, shown below. Incidentally, Avonmouth Fire Station apparently won a national energy reduction competition in 2019, but has now been demolished and a new station built. In the Fire Authority meeting of 9th February 2018, a previous Fire Authority member argued against Avon's repeated demolishing and rebuilding of stations, saying, in quotes, the Fire Authority should consider whether it would be cheaper to refurbish rather than rebuild, end quotes. The response from a member of senior management was, again start quotes, if fire stations were refurbished rather than rebuilt, the levels of energy efficiency and cost savings would not be achieved. Hopefully the impressive Avonmouth energy reductions were achieved even without refurbishments, considering the station was just about to be demolished. The response also seems not to consider the high carbon emissions from rebuilding and the financial loss involved when demolishing buildings that have been recently valued in the high hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds. In 2019/20, demolition of the old station and the new construction commenced. In the public access statement, it states that this is the asset register entry for 2019-20, and then there is a small table which is replicated for members of the public on our website. I did not spot the error within the period allowed for it to be raised with the auditors, so I'm raising it now. I did receive invoices relating to the £428,000 spent on the new Avonmouth Fire Station, the £428,000 capital expenditure during 2019-20 appears to have been devalued to zero. The remaining £258,000 devaluation presumably reflects the partial demolition of the old station at that point. The invoices I received also showed an additional £249,007.90 at least had been paid in 2018-19 on the pre-construction phase of the Avonmouth rebuild. So according to the asset register and the accounts, at least £677,000 has been spent with nothing to show for it. I received the above records before the finalisation of the accounts, so I checked to see if this error had been corrected. It hadn't. I find it shocking that the sort of errors I fought over 2 years to force Avon Fire to admit, which resulted in a catastrophic risk register rating, are, after their exposure, continuing. I hope this error will be corrected and not dismissed as immaterial, as was an error in the 2018-19 accounts of £714,000 for the rebuilt Temple Back Station it being less than the materiality level of over £1 million set by the auditors. I also hope I will be provided with the records I am legally entitled to receive in this year's period of public inspection. And that is the end of the public access statement. I'll now pass to Amanda, who will read the response.
Yes, in response to the public access statement, the committee responds as follows. With reference to the 2019-20 financial accounts, these were externally audited and approved by this committee for publication in November 2020. The member of the public was provided with full access to the financial papers she was entitled to as part of the public inspection process for the 2019-20 accounts. The member of the public's dissatisfaction with the information provided in respect to the 2019-20 accounts and 2018-19 accounts regarding Temple Back duplicates the content of previous statements considered by this committee, most recently in May 2020, and by the Fire Authority on 16th of December 2020, and through complaints to the external auditors, the Services Data Protection Team, and myself as Monitoring Officer. As the member of the public has exhausted internal avenues in respect to this matter, the last stage of which was a review by myself, their complaint is now subject to an external review by the Information Commissioner's Office. We await their decision and will inform members of the outcome. The service has retained all the relevant information to answer any questions that the Information Commissioner's Office may have. In respect to the 2021 accounts, Appendix 2 of the paper at Agenda Item 9, which will be presented by our Treasurer, explains the process and timescales for the public inspection of the accounts which are up to and including 31st of March 21. If approved by this committee, the inspection period opens on the 15th of July. The member of the public then has the opportunity to make an appointment with Bristol City Council to inspect and make copies of the records they are legally entitled to on the financial accounts for 2020/21. They also have the facility to ask questions or make objections to the auditor, providing a copy to the Treasurer. In accordance with the approach agreed with this committee in May 2020, we will progress any new requests for information or complaints contained in this public access statement, and therefore the concerns which have been raised about the asset register entries for Avonmouth station, in accordance with the service complaints or freedom of information process, whichever is the most relevant. In addition, we will ensure that members of this committee, the external auditors and the Treasurer are advised of the content of that response. The committee then has the facility to instigate further inquiries should they consider it necessary. So that's the formal response. Can I also just take this opportunity for future reference to remind members of the public that when they present a public access statement, there are some limitations on what a public access statement can be used for, and as part of that list, the following is not allowed, that is any matter which has already been lodged with the authority or with another statutory body as a formal complaint, because that has already been raised, so it's not a new matter. I think that concludes that section.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'll move on to item 8, which is an item for information. It is the 2020-21 external audit update, and I'd like to invite Ian to come to the speaker's desk to present that, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the report is hopefully fairly self-explanatory, but I'm conscious there are some new members who may so I'll try and explain some of the terminology that us auditors use, which might be less familiar to some people. Just to summarise, we presented the audit plan to the March Audit, Governance and Ethics Committee. So that's the plan that sets out the work that we're going to do in terms of our audit of the our external audit of the accounts. So that is a useful document for members, and we'll refer back to it when we report back on the outcome of our work. In there, we identify what we refer to as significant risks. Now, I just want to put that into context. Those are the areas that we will spend most of our time in terms of the audit. That's not saying they're significant risks to the organisation, or they shouldn't be necessarily compared to the risks in the risk register of the organisation. So they're just about the key areas that we will focus on in the audit. So sometimes the terminology can be a bit sort of, significant risk, but it would be standard in any audit to have a number of significant risks, usually between 1 and about 4 or 5. There is nothing unusual in the ones that we've identified in terms of your audit. They are very standard ones, some of which will be in every audit, and a couple which are specific. But I just wanted to give you that context really of the work, and say to you, there's nothing highlighted in our plan that says there's any particular risk relevant to you compared to other organisations. They're fairly standard things that we would look at in any audit. The bigger numbers are the ones that have most impact on the reader of the account. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. And also to clarify, there have been no changes to those significant risks. So as we've done our interim work, we've obviously revisit that. We go back and say, was our planning assessment reasonable? Yes, we haven't changed that. So I think that's important to note as well from our interim work. Just to point out, we had a great meeting with the Treasurer and the Finance team, really good, sort of set the expectations on both sides around the external audit, talk through the timelines, make sure we're clear on all of those, and that was a very productive meeting. And I think that's moving forward very well. The team are already starting the external audit, so the accounts you see presented today, we had sight of those, so we're getting on with the work on that. And Russ was telling me they've already started asking me questions, which is exactly what I wanted to hear. Probably not what he wanted to hear, but it gets us through the process and we're moving on with that. So we're on course for completing the accounts audit and getting them approved by the end of September, which is the normal deadline this year in terms of the accounts process for local government and fire risk bodies as well. So just to give you that, the timelines are set out there, and we're aiming for that AGEC meeting on the 23rd of September to get them approved by the 30th. Also, just to point out in terms of value for money, for new members, there are new requirements on external auditors around value for money this year, so we'll have to do a longer report. We used to just do a fairly short opinion. We now do an auditor's annual report, which will give more information on how we think the organisation is set up to deliver value for money in the services that it delivers. We've now had a response to our information request. We asked for lots of documents to go through. We've had that now. We're working our way through that, and we'll do some interviews to add some more detail to those, and then pull together that report again in time for the 30th of September. So we're working through that process. And as it says there, we'll continue to work with management to meet that timeline and work together. One of the key things that delayed us last year was the information from the pension fund. We've now written to them already and said this is what we need this year, explained to them the timeline that is required. So hopefully we will get that information on a more timely basis this year. If not, Dania and I are sort of primed to put some pressure on and use our means to try and get that through as soon as we can. So I think that's a positive update. Nothing of particular concern to bring to your attention.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'd like to open it to members for questions. Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for all the good work that's gone in on this. I'm just slightly puzzled because it says this document is confidential and not to be copied or made available to any other party, and this is not held under exempt regulations. So how does that square?
Well, I'm sure Ian can deal with this, but we have permission to use this for the purposes of this committee and as part of the public process.
So
I think that's standard wording that appears in your presentation.
It is indeed standard sort of auditor wording to say nobody else should rely on this really. It is for you as an authority, and obviously you use that as part of your public accountability, but that's the extent to which it can be used. What we don't want is anybody else relying on it without understanding exactly the context like you have in listening to me talk to you and everything else. So that's what we say.
The member of the public would be entitled to read this.
Indeed.
Maybe at some point that might need to just appear in the minutes.
Thank you, Ian.
We can maybe get that. wording change for future reports, so to make it clear that it is available for members of the committee to use in open session.
Yeah, we can cover that.
Thank you, Ian. Angela?
Thank you, Chair. Ian, we've spoken to the committee before about the Redmond review and the potential implications of that government review on the future of kind of audit, timescales, fees, and process and timelines. And at that point, it was just feeding into the committee the awareness of that, and that we would provide further information as and when it comes out. Could you just give the committee an update on where things are with the Redmond review and the implications of that?
Do my best, yes. If you spot the media today, I think the Public Accounts Committee have issued a press release on their thoughts around what the Ministry of Housing and the government communities are doing in response to the Redmond review. They're not particularly happy with the progress that's being made in terms of some of the recommendations from the Redmond review. So it is progressing rather slowly. The public sector audit and appointments who appoint us on your behalf as the external auditors, just for members' awareness, you as an organisation will either opt into that procurement through the public sector audit and appointments, or you can appoint your own auditors. 99% of organisations in the UK decided to go with the public sector audit and appointment collective procurement, obviously seeking beneficial sort of economies of scale of doing that as a desert. And there was also some fears that those geographically remote might not get tenders if they went down that route. So that's why it's gone down that, went down that route. They are now consulting PSAA on their next procurement. The initial contract runs for 5 years, so we're in year 3 of 5. They do have the power unilaterally to extend that to 7. But at the moment, they're consulting on whether they will put a new procurement out for year 6 effectively, so that ended after year 5. However, they're putting a provision in there that if they don't get the result they want, they could still extend the contract. So that's kind of the best summary I can give you of where we're at the moment. And as you say, it's probably useful to just have that update, and perhaps I should build it into the report. It's just a brief update on that as we move along and that progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for you? Thank you very much for presenting that.
So I think the recommendation is to note that report.
I'd like to propose that the committee notes the information in the report. Could I have a second, please? Richard. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, which is an item for decision. It's the 2020-21 draft statement of annual accounts and narrative report. And at this point, I'll pass it over to Danielle, our treasurer.
Thank you, Chair. Number 9 on page 15 is a presentation of the draft 2021 statement of accounts and narrative report. And we also have a copy of the notice of public rights, which I'm happy to talk through with members after my top level briefing. And this is required under the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. As Ian from External Audit has already confirmed, the national deadline for approved final audited accounts is the 30th of September 2021. And the finance team are working very closely with External Audit to progress the work required. The production of the accounts is a highly complex and technical exercise and is led through Bristol City Council, who, as members are aware, we have a financial services SLA. Russ, who joins us today and is sat behind members, is our lead technical accountant on the production of those accounts. The narrative report, which is attached, is an organisational-wide document and has been produced by the Head of Finance, Claire, who's also sat behind us, with the support of Jane, who's the Deputy Director of Corporate Services. And they've liaised with managers across the service to produce this draft report. report. There is a key risk listed, and Ian has helpfully already raised that. This was around information being provided by the auditors of the Avon Pension Fund. Last year we did incur delays on that, and as Ian said, our external auditors have now formally written to the auditors of the pension fund asking for the information by the required date. Today we're sharing these draft accounts, and we are asking for the accounts to be reviewed subject to any queries or questions today. And this is to enable us to share our draft accounts with the general public on or before the first working day of August. Before I hand over to Russ and Claire, can I direct members to Appendix 2, which outlines the public notice. And this is on page 128. And a Regulation 15.2b of Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. The Fire Authority is required to share the draft accounts with the general public for inspection and review. As noted earlier, the draft accounts need to be shared on or before the 1st of August, and we would be looking ideally to share these draft statements with the public on our website from tomorrow, which is well in advance of the required date. Important issues about the notice of public rights. First of all, the inspection directly relates to the current set of draft accounts, 2020-21 only. The general public are invited to review and raise issues and questions within the statutory requirement of 30 days. Copies of the accounts and related information can be requested by members of the public, and the Fire Authority can charge for copying those documents if they deem that is reasonable. So the recommendation today, before I pass you over to Russ and Claire to go through the draft accounts and narrative statement, is for AJAC to approve 2020-21 draft statement of accounts and narrative report to enable the Fire Authority to meet its public notice requirement. Just before I hand over to Russ and Claire, I would like to give my personal thanks for all the work that Russ and Claire, and more recently Jane, has helped as well on the narrative report. I can't explain the significant amount of workload these accounts take, particularly in terms of the technicality and the requirements in terms of the quality levels that are expected. So if I could hand over to Russ, I don't know if Russ is staying there or...
If Russ could come up.
All right, thank you.
And while Russ does that, thank you, Danielle, and I'd like to echo from the committee the thanks for the work that's been put in preparing these documents.
Hello. So nothing much to say, apart from the accounts have been produced under international accounting standards as interpreted by the CITFA code. CITFA is our regulatory accounting body for local authorities. Prime statements, which include the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, the movement in reserve statement, the balance sheet and cash flow are on pages 48 to 51 of the your document, or page 28 to 31 of the draft set of accounts. And these figures are supported by the detailed notes of the accounts in the remaining document. We have got a couple of minor changes that we would like to make to these papers for the version that will go out on the website fingers crossed tomorrow. So just to highlight those to you, they are very small, but on page 71 of your pack, which is note 7, the PFI, the third paragraph down,
Sorry, Director, what page was that? I coughed when you said
That's
that.
right, page 71 of your pack,
Thank you.
or page 51 of the accounts. It's a very small thing, third paragraph down, it says summary totals of the assets held under PFI and accounted for as part of non-current assets. We would like to change that to, say, long-term, and that's just so that it matches up with the wording in the prime statement of the balance sheet.
So sorry, so which words are we replacing for long-term?
Non-current.
Non-current.
Yeah.
Super.
Sorry.
I've also spotted one minor thing. On page 50 of the bundle, which is page 30 of the accounts, we just need to update the name of the chair to Councillor Brenda Massey. No, it's no longer Donald.
Yeah, I've got that to do. when I think these papers went out, it was still Donald, I believe.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
That's
So for
right.
publication for tomorrow.
Yeah. And sorry, let me just get down to it. It's quite a long way down. It's page 106 of the pack. Which is part of note 26, which is around the pensions.
Sorry, what's the other page?
Sorry, so it's 106 of your pack, or number 26, page 86 of the document itself. Sorry, it's miles down. I'm getting there. Incredibly long document. I'm sure you can imagine. Right, so the bullet point local government pension scheme, at the bottom of that paragraph, it says the latest valuation was undertaken on 31st of March 2016, and the assessment for the overall funding level was 96%. We need to change that to the year is 2019, and the assessment of overall funding levels is now 94%.
It was 86%, I think,
Yeah.
so it's now 94.
94, and the year has changed to 2019. That's an oversight.
Super.
Apologies. Any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions from members or officers to Russ on that particular part? No. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm not sure if this is appropriate for this minute or not, but I see under fleet it talks about 7 Europine's purchase. The COVID-19 restriction prevented the delivery of 3 vehicles. What's that about?
That is part of the narrative statement which Claire is about to do. So
Okay,
I'll bow out of giving you
Yeah,
an incorrect answer to that one.
I'm not sure which stage to represent.
No, that's fine.
I think, Councillor, that will be covered in the Performance Committee on Friday, because there's a capital update which updates on fleet expenditure and the impact of COVID. So I think it might not be dealt with in detail at this committee meeting, but I know it's on the agenda to be considered at the one on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Chair, just as we change between Russ and Claire, there's a typo in one issue for update on the final minutes. So if I could draw your attention to the notice of public rights, which I've been through with members, which was on page 128. In the first paragraph, it refers to the date that we publicise our draft accounts, and it says the 15th of July to 26th. There's a small little typo there, it should be 15th with a TH, not an ST. So that's minor. And on page 16 of my report, so item 9, page 16, in section 5.3, I've noted down the draft statement of accounts needs to be shared with the public for 30 working days, and this process needs to be, currently my wording is completed, and clearly that should be started. So if you could capture that within the final minutes, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then over to Claire, our head of finance.
Good morning, members. So I'm just going to quickly read a quote from the CIPFA website with regards to the narrative report that we've shared with you, which says that financial statements in all sectors are difficult to interpret and becoming more so. Narrative explanations and commentary are increasingly needed to make sense of financial statements. particularly for non-profit organisations, to help demonstrate the extent to which the objectives of the reporting entity have been achieved. So what we've done in this narrative report that you've received is look at the summary financial statements, which are included within the draft accounts, but also include some additional information which gives you comparatives to what happened last year in terms of where we spent the funds and what we spent, and also some reports from other areas of the service, so certainly around our environmental team, and also we've got some information there around the HMIC inspection. So it's just to give a little bit of context. These accounts are really important but can be quite difficult to interpret. So what we're trying to do is then apply that to what's actually happening in North Avon Fire and Rescue and has happened over the last financial year. So that's really all I've got to say in terms of what the narrative statement does. Are there any questions about the narrative statement that you'd like to raise? I will see if I can answer.
Thank you, Claire. Do members have any questions? Neil?
Hesitate again, whether this is the right point, but I was a bit surprised. For non-emergency attended calls, our target is an average of 62 minutes. On average, we took 7.45 minutes. That seems remarkably good, but have we got the targets right, do you think?
So I'm struggling a little bit to hear. What page are you on?
Sorry, it's page 22 of the report itself.
Yeah, this links again to Amanda's point that these ones are taken from our latest performance report, which is also going to PRSC for scrutiny from further detail on those ones. I believe they are correct in terms of where we are against our targets, and that's published on our
I'm not disputing they're correct. I was just wondering if we've got the facts right, because there's such a big discrepancy.
Oh, right, you mean the implications of kind of overperforming in that area?
Well, you know,
The average is 62.
62 minutes, and we're doing
sorry.
it in less than 8, you know. It's,
The target is 62 and the average is 7.45. 22.
Yeah, so that's a bit more kind of overperforming against our targets in that area.
So, but rather in
So
the
it's-
same vein, thanks very much for the latest statistical review. There are some dramatic changes from one year to the next, I noticed here. And yet it all works out perfectly in the end, which is great. But I'm just wondering about, whether we should reflect on those statistics and see whether any conclusions we might usefully draw from that. This is the next 2 pages, well, 2023.
Whether the suggestion could then be Amanda that this is then carried to the PRSC, who have the delegated scrutiny around our performance targets, both for because they will be considering the targets for this one, but also the setting for next year. So that would seem to be the place to consider where we are with those targets.
We can raise it as, obviously the papers have now been circulated for PRSC on Friday, so I can't ask for a fresh paper to be prepared at this late stage, but I can certainly make sure that the chair is aware that you've raised it in this committee and it is something that he ought to be looking at. And if it's not on the agenda for Friday or it doesn't come up, we can make sure it's reviewed as soon as possible thereafter. But yeah, I've made a note of that. Thank you for raising it. Are there any particular concerns that you had about these statistics? Were there ones that stood out to you?
Well, there are a number of dramatic ones there, really. I wouldn't say I'm particularly concerned, but
Okay.
I think it just is an opportunity to pause and think how soon are we likely to get back, if at all, to the last year's statistics?
Yeah.
It is an interesting question. And are there efficiencies that could be identified along the way?
Thank you. That's a really good point.
I mean, it obviously has been an exceptional year with the
Oh, absolutely.
pandemic.
But it shows how we can still carry on despite the, almost wholesale change of life.
Absolutely.
And all for only 10 pence a day for each person.
Exactly, I'm all for 10p a day.
Thank you. Do any other members have questions for the plan? Or officers? Thank you very much for presenting that plan. Danielle, did you want to sum up, or shall we just make a decision?
Yeah, I think if I could draw members back to the recommendation in section 2 of my report, just to review and approve these draft statements of accounts to allow us to put them on our website to meet our public notice requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Just find my papers amongst the stack to get these out. Thank you very much. So the committee is asked to review and approve the draft 2020-2021 Statement of Accounts and Narrative Report to enable the Fire Authority to meet its public notice requirement.
That is subject to the minor changes that were pointed out.
Yes.
Subject to the typos and the minor changes, thank you, yes. I'd like to propose that we do that. Do I have a second for that? Thank you very much, John. All members in favour, raise your hands. Brilliant. Myself, unanimous, not anonymous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 10, which is to note and raise any concerns. It is the Corporate Risk Register, and Jane will be presenting that. Thank you very much.
Chair, before Jane does, I must make my apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you. This paper is for noting and for raising any concerns. I'd just like to do a brief summary to new members around how we monitor, manage and report on the Corporate Risk Register. We have 17 corporate risks at the moment, and each one of those corporate risks has a dedicated risk owner. And they are required to give an update every month and to review the risk scores in line with the definitions and to make sure that we've got adequate controls and mitigations in place. Alongside that, the Corporate Risk Register is presented to the service leadership team every month. And at that meeting, we do a deep dive on at least 2 of those corporate risks, whereby we look at it in detail and we make sure that it's cross-functional and we pick up other issues that may be arising elsewhere in the organisation and make sure that we've got the mitigations and controls in place. Alongside that, the Service Leadership Board will look at the high level risks at their meetings and scrutinise those when we do have high level risks. I'm bringing this paper today because it relates to an internal audit report that was carried out in the 2021 audit plan in relation to an advisory review of the risk management process. And we asked for this to be done so that we can be compared to the best practice, other fire and rescue services, and to identify where we could enhance our corporate risk register. So the findings of that advisory review were presented to this committee at its meeting on the 21st of May. And the advisory report included a number of suggestions, which I have indicated on page 131 of your committee papers. There's a table there, and that shows actually 7 areas where we could enhance the corporate risk register. A number of these relate to the corporate risk management strategy, which needs to be reviewed. And I am currently looking at that strategy. I am currently looking at software to make the process more efficient and cross-reference with other actions that we have to report on. And I'm working with the transformation team on providing that software across the service. So in light of that, item 6 on there talks about training for this committee and also service leadership team. And because I'm still awaiting the software, it's sort of delayed me doing the training because that will be included in the strategy. So I'm asking this committee, I intend to reschedule to the 31st of December, which is aligned to other of these recommendations from the advisory audit. If I can take you now to 134 of your committee papers, I carried out a review with the heads of the risk owners to look at specifically their risk against the definitions to make sure that they were current and appropriate for the level of risk that we consider within each risk area. And as a result of that, you will see that there 13 of those risks have now been reviewed. Well, all of the risks have been reviewed, but 13 have been reduced in light of that in-depth review. And so that indicates that on that table there. If I can then take you to the 137 of your papers, you will see the complete summary of the corporate risk register, and that gives details of now the risk owner role, who owns that risk or who updates that risk. It will give the description, the risk action, initial risk score, controls in place, which is a additional information that is included this time round after the review, the current risk score, and then the planned actions to mitigate the risk, and the planned risk scores once all of those are in place, once we get to a stage where we think it is tolerated. And it gives you a latest position on each of the corporate risks. That is my update. So if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Shane, and thank you for the large piece of work that you've done on this. Sorry. David, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you for your report. I'm interested in the risks CR12 and CR13 related to IT. Obviously, any risk with IT is dependent on how your systems work. And I'm interested in the steps that you've taken to reduce them and what the actual risks were. description for CR12 includes various software applications, including antivirus protection and active monitoring. Is that a result of the recent SolarWinds hack, that your systems aren't secure?
Our systems have never been hacked, shall I say. We do have antivirus software in place. We do have active monitoring of our sites with our IT provider, which is Amicus. They do lots of monitoring of flow into the organisation. We do have a risk assessment done each year, an IT risk assessment done each year about the link to Bristol City Council and our payroll and everything else. We also do penetration testing each year, so that will be an independent company will try and hack into our servers, if you like, and through the firewalls. And we have a report following that exercise, if you like, and that is reported to the Service Leadership Board, and any weaknesses or any concerns are also monitored, reported upon and actioned. So we do have lots of things in place in terms of hackers and malware and penetration of our firewalls, so yes.
That's gratifying to hear, but is it within the remit of this committee to ask for more detail on that?
I think you're always able to ask more detail. In fact, this has come up once before. I'm not sure if it was Councillor Butters, but I know the previous council had always also asked about firewalls and so on. I wonder whether we could set up a separate training event or briefing with Amicus coming in to speak about it.
Yes, we have set up that before. Obviously, in the public document, there are limited things that we can say about what provisions we have in place.
Yeah.
So I think it's a sensible one to take that off. As I say, we have done a session because the reason was raised before, but that's before you kind of joined us. So yeah, we'll be happy to.
Because I might not be a forensic accountant, but I am an IT specialist.
Well, I think that would be very helpful.
Very, very helpful for us at the moment in position, because as you've read, we're in quite a transition with our IT and we're doing a lot of work in that area. So I think that would be very kind of mutually helpful, and I appreciate the offer and the insight. So that would be great. Thank you.
I think the next member development session is a little way off, so we might even schedule one before then, because I think it's an important topic. So I'll take that away as an action point, that you get a proper briefing about this, so then you can have sight of any reports you need, and we can then benefit from your expertise. That would be great. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for the offer, David, and it will be taken up, I can assure you. Do we have any other questions for Jane? Richard?
Thank you very much for the report, Jane. Very good. I was just looking at CR14 on Appendix 1 under governance. I see that we dropped from December. I just wonder if you could just give us a quick sort of reasoning behind that as to 15 down to 12. So it's not massive, but just obviously was something that's sort of overarching as governance. Just jumped out at me, I suppose.
Yeah. It was relation to the virtual meetings. We're now having these meetings in place. We're still able to do the committees. We're still able to report on various issues, and we also make it available to the public via YouTube. So in terms of failure to comply with our committee statutory duties, we have covered that, and I think it works very well, and it seems to be available to the public to view and to question, as you've heard this morning. So in terms of the impact of the pandemic, we have managed that, and we have made sure we have controls in place to enable us to meet and scrutinise
what the service is doing and what we're presenting to you. So that was my reasoning around it.
Yeah.
I think also prior to that, there was a major change that you had myself appointed permanently. She had a cover clerk, I think, for 18 months or 2 years. So I think that meant you had someone devoted to making sure that the governance requirements were met. We also completed the review of the Constitution last year, and that's been republished in 2021. So there are a lot of good moves in terms of governance. So I think that's why the score's probably been really high and dropped quite significantly. So.
And in terms of the general comment, as Jane highlighted, we are conscious that a number of them look like they have gone down this time, and that's partly because of some of our planned further mitigations have been put in place, as both Jane and Amanda have described. But also, if you recall the internal audit report, what they were saying to us is that actually, if you look at the good controls that we've got in place, and you look purely at the definitions which are in the paper about what major and catastrophic and probable mean, in their view, we were overstating our risk in quite a number of areas. So what we have done, as James described, is a whole kind of exercise where we've gone back through all of our risk scores against the definitions. So that has also contributed in some of them kind of reducing down. So some of it is the review, and some of it is that we've put further kind of plan mitigations in place. And I think both of those will have contributed to the reduction from the 25 to the 12 on the governance.
So thanks, it's relative. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions at all? Okay. No more questions.
Sorry, David.
How often do we get an update on this question?
Sorry, I bring it to this committee twice in the year. So you'll get it every 6 months. So.
Okay. And do we get notified externally if there is an emergency risk added to it, or is it every 6 months?
I think it'd be a matter for judgment. If normally the senior leadership board, all the most high-ranking risks are reviewed by the chief fire officer and the directors, who will make sure that they're managed, mitigated, whatever's required. But I think as your clerk, I go to a number of those meetings, and if I felt that as elected members you needed to be aware of them, I'd make a judgment call, and we'd have an extraordinary meeting immediately.
On individuals. So kind of in the way that we kind of recently had the pensions issues, and you had kind of papers on that. We are looking, as well as Jane has indicated, at reviewing our corporate risk management strategy, and that is where it says twice a year. And what we might do as part of that when we review that with members is ask you whether you think that is enough or whether you want it on a more regular basis. In particular, that now that we are streamlining it as well, it used to be in much larger documents. So we can have that consideration and debate, I think, as part of looking at that kind of strategy, and whether that still works for you, or you want it on a more regular basis, or you do want this kind of exceptional part kind of built in addition to what Amanda has described.
Thank you, Angie. Do we have any other questions at all? Our recommendation is to note and raise any concerns that we may have.
So just one thing, if I may, I'm just, of course, just looking at, it talks about North Somerset and Baines. This picture is, this is on 24.
24, did you say?
Yeah. This is right to go significant shortfall collection.
Sorry, Neil, I'm struggling to hear you a little bit.
Sorry. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Page 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks at the bottom, latest position, North Somerset and Baines. This picture is right to go significant shortfall on collection funds in 2021, which will need to be recovered over the period 21, 22, 23, 24. Because the government has announced that shortfalls can be spread over 3 years and we part-funded centrally. I'm just wondering if there are any observations, or anybody would like to make a comment on that, or is that
I think that would either be for Danielle or Claire. I think that is also reflected, I think, in the narrative statement, is it? So
it is. So yeah, we have mentioned it in the notice, but also we have taken that into account in our medium-term financial plan. So we factored in the fact that we're spreading obviously last year's collection deficit over the next 3 years. And we've also said to be prudent that we suspect we may have a similar situation, although of a lesser degree, in this financial year, and then we're expecting to recover once obviously the pandemic has kind of come to an end, or we're back to something approaching normal. So those have all been taken into account in our financial planning, and they are areas that we're constantly reviewing as part of that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, I assume our cameraman for resources is going to know about this. Yes?
Thanks.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it is mentioned in the narrative report. I think it says that the effect isn't great for this year, but as Claire said, it will be spread over the next 3 years. Just any other members got any other questions? Okay, so we were asked to note the information that we've had from the Corporate Risk Register.
Shall I just read out the recommendations? The committee is asked to review the register and consider the controls and mitigations in place. That's A. B. Consider whether the committee needs any further information to be assured of the appropriate management of these corporate risks. And C. Raise any concerns about the rescheduling of item 6 of the internal audit actions. That's regarding the refresher training to the 31st December 21. So it's really to note the report and to raise any concerns.
Okay, are members happy with that rescheduling? There's no particular concerns. Neil?
Happy.
Oh, you are happy. Okay, well, I'd like to...
I thought you were looking for a
proposer.
No, I'll propose that we do follow those recommendations, review the register, consider whether there needs to be any further information, and we've already discussed any concerns that we've had about rescheduling. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Yeah, thank you very much. And all those in favour?
Super.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Claire. Much appreciated. Moving on to item 11, it's just for information. It is the date of the next meeting. Will be the 23rd of September, 21 at 10:30. Do we have any information on the venue for that, or will that be confirmed?
I sent them out yesterday. I can't remember. I think it's in HQ.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry. I should know that. I'd like to propose that that is the date and time for the next meeting. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, John. And all those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 12, which is the exclusion of the press and the public. I'd like to propose that we resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So could I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Neil. All those in favour? Thank you. Mark, if you'd like to stop the recording now.